When the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, 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 oh, glory, glory.
Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk.
Hello, welcome to the Well After Hours. I'm your host, Beverly Allen, and I'm so glad you could be with us again at the Well on a Thursday. God is so good, and I am so blessed and so fortunate to be able to present my guest who has been here several times before, and every time she comes, it's exciting, it's informative, and it's a blessing to the body of Christ. We want to welcome back Dr. Clarencia Shade. Thank you, Dr. Shade, for being with us again today. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for the invite, and it's a pleasure to be back.
This recent project that you have undertaken and done and launched, to me, is just so exciting. I mean, I understand the relationship, father and daughter, and my father was out of my life during my youth, many of my youthful years, and for you to have lost your father at the age of 6, and to hear this story, to find out what you're going to tell us today is so exciting. I can't wait for the viewers to hear this. But I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio for those who don't know your background. Not only are you Dr. Clarencia Shade, you're Reverend Dr. Clarencia Shade, but I'm going to read the brief because I know it's long. You've done a lot in your life, but you've cut it down for me just to read this today. So Dr. Clarencia R. Newsome Shade, LCSW, MED, Master's in Education, Doctorate in Theology, is an ordained minister and has worked extensively in education and healthcare. She is a psychotherapist in private practice and an organizational consultant offering employee assistance for businesses and Christian counseling. Dr. Shade formerly worked as the Director of Student Support Services as the head of a multi-million-dollar substance abuse prevention program for the public schools in Newark, New Jersey, where she managed a staff of 300. She holds a dual MSW degree with a concentration in clinical and administrative social work. She is the proud mother of 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. So your book that you have written, Outspoken, The Reflections of a Daughter, when did you decide to actually start this project, and how long did it take to complete?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I've always wanted to do it, but I would become distracted by, loyalty to my mother and my, who I call Daddy Duncan, my stepdad, who raised me actually from a baby. And not only that, but there was no information readily available. And as I've gotten older, the archives and internet things that are available to us now helped me a great deal. But I do admit I did not begin the actual trying to compile a narrative until my mother passed. Not only did I feel that it was more than enough time, but that, there would be no issues of her feeling like I was digging up her past, etc. So, I mean, I've had snippets and pieces, but I have never understood until now the significant role that my father played.
Yes. Wow, that is amazing. And the role is so significant, isn't it?
I have learned that my father was a part of the go-to law firm in the civil rights movement across this country. People from other states would seek them out because they had a winning track record and they were very front line when it comes to the major civil rights things that happened to shift the South out of segregation.
Wow. I read where you had said that when you were 16, that's when you began to get information from your mom about your dad that was kind of given to you in a treasure chest, sort of like.
Well, it's really the other way around. When I turned 16, you know how teenagers are and that whole issue psychologically about identity. I started to trust her. Like I had heard the words before, you know, your father is, because I'd gone through grade school and I began using my mother's husband's name. And so it came to light very, very early that I was confused. And so I had been told the words that this person was my father, but I had a father. So it didn't kind of make sense until I turned 16 when you struggle for identity. And that's one of the major, you know, psychological challenges for teenagers is who am I?
Yes.
So I began to press for more information. And not only that, but I began to want to make contact with my relatives in Virginia.
Wow.
So it turns out that she did have a suitcase full of pictures. I mean, some were of her. They weren't all of my father, but that's where I began to first be able to touch, you know, a picture of him or, you know, his degree from Virginia Union, even though I haven't found the one from Howard University yet. But it was that point at which I started to press more.
Something tangible, right? Wow. That is amazing. So after you started getting that information, how did you put, you know, what journey was it putting all those pieces together?
It was a start and a stop. So I was satisfied for then that I had this. And I kind of went on with my life for a little while. And I was able to call my paternal grandmother, spoke to her one time, and she wrote me a letter that's in the book. And I spoke to my father's sister. But I wanted to make contact. And so that satisfied me for a while. I just went on with all the things that I was involved in, you know, high school and church and my friends. So I thought I'd solved the problem, but it continued to rise up in different points in my life. So for instance, in the book, I talk about when I was expecting my first son. And again, another challenging identity moment. You know, who is he going to be? Who is he like, et cetera. So one day on the job, right after Roots had aired, everybody saw Roots. And it made everybody want to go and find their roots.
Mm-hmm.
I managed, and I won't go through all the detail, but I managed to find my first cousin. And we spoke on the phone. And so here again, I felt like I had touched it and I was good. I was like, okay, they're there. And, you know, I had my questions. How come you guys didn't look for us or this, that, and the other? And of course, after that, I was a new mom and going through a rocky place in my marriage, ended up moving back to New Jersey, lost the number, and again, another stop. And so it's like every so many years or a special occasion, like in 2017 on Father's Day, it was just one of those moments that I couldn't ignore. And so I started pulling the scraps together. And of course, by then, my daddy Duncan had passed in 2016. And it left a wide open space for me to go searching. And that's what I began to do. And it took me 3 years of constant digging to find the story that I have. So I was able to see the Afro-American newspapers. I had gone to on a search. I actually went to Richmond to sit with the librarians. I started to find newspaper articles online. And so I was excited that I was finally able to trace some of his actual work, even though I don't have personal memories of him at all, because he died when I was 6, but he and my mom separated at a time when he was working in Richmond with this law firm. and he was not present. Now he came back and forth to visit, but I don't really have a large amount of memory about being like this picture on this book. I mean, I don't remember this moment.
I love that cover.
Thank you. I don't remember this moment, and I didn't find these pictures, this particular set, until after my mom had passed. So it's just been a patchwork journey over the past, I'm going to say, 20 years. And to finally get enough focus and find the right person to work with me, it's been a journey.
I
But
tell you,
I'm satisfied now, and I think that's something that I feel. Not only is this a major accomplishment, but I do feel connected to him in a very real way.
oh my goodness. Boy, he would be so proud to see what his baby girl has done over these years. And you know, it's amazing that God chooses a time to allow things to happen. It wasn't time then, but it was like when you said like getting past your mom, you know, because you didn't want her to feel any kind of way. And your stepdad. And like now there was open range for you to go ahead. You didn't have to worry about anybody's feelings, you know, and you could get all that out that you wanted to get out. And what that must have felt like was just absolutely incredible. The closer you got, maybe you could describe your feelings of what that felt like to finally kind of come to complete the book.
There were moments of joy and tears. It was a part of grieving in a way because I mourned what I obviously missed, but I also celebrated the fact that I now have something that I can touch that reflects his work and his life that I can always go to. So I don't have to internalize all those feelings anymore. It's out here in a book, and I can share it with everyone because I'm so proud of him. I really am. And that wasn't always available to me. You know, stepchildren or adopted children struggle with, why didn't my parent want me? Or why am I not seeing my mother and my father? And it's just natural. Kids blame themselves, or they blame the situation on something they don't understand. But you carry that grief. And so it was a relief to finally get this project done. It's been a lifetime of searching in my heart, as well as now in the archives. And there's probably a little bit more out there, but I'll save that for a second volume. But I'm so glad and thankful to God that he allowed me to find this much.
Wow. That is, it almost sounds like a movie, you know, because it really is, it's so real, you know, and like you say, there are so many people going on a journey, looking for a parent, or, you know, trying to make a connection of a parent they never even knew, you know, and for this to be resolved, for you to at least have something tangible, you know, all this background information, this legacy that he has left, you know, and you kind of probably get to see even where you get some of your, you know, personality, you know, and character traits, learning about him, you can put it together.
I really can. And it's amazing to me that right up under my nose, there was a living, breathing example, because my first cousin pointed out to me that my son, my firstborn, looks remarkably like him. And there's a picture in the book where they are side by side. And it's uncanny how much they look alike. And then I start to look at my son's mannerisms, his character, his easygoing nature, you know, and I say to myself, oh my God, it's my dad. I would never have put two and two together. That would never have happened. So that's the joy of connecting with family. And of course, my cousin Kim did supply a lot of background stories for me. So I didn't do it alone, but I am glad to stand on the mountaintop and declare it's done. I'm Newsome's daughter, and I'm very proud.
And it's a part of civil rights history that we didn't even have.
Isn't that the truth? And I'm also feeling very upgraded in my knowledge and passion, because the South, and even though we had been declared, you know, that integration was right and segregation was wrong, the resistance that went on, and Virginia became the hub of challenging that segregation successfully in the courthouse, and they were winning. And that's how the reputation spread all across the country, because what Oliver Hill's law firm was doing had not been done. And my dad was in there, part of it, and actively on the front lines.
And it's really true how many footsteps behind a major move are really very forceful, as opposed to, you know, putting those who were up front. Sometimes we see all the big names, the names up front, but there's an army of people behind them who are pushing and working and doing the leg work, you know, to help them, you know, move forward.
An army of people and everyone with the same mission in mind. I don't know what's happening today with our African American community, but we're not all on the same page. We're on a page, but we're not all on the same page. And I think during the era, just before Dr. King and during, my father actually knew Dr. King and Thurgood Marshall and all these famous names. And that was another motivating factor. I began to read the documents and I'm like, well, where's my father's name in, you know, out there in the world? They would always mention his name right along with Thurgood Marshall, Martin A. Martin. They were all a part of the same law firm. And then I found out that my father was a part of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And so they crisscrossed each other in many ways. They acted together as a team to win these cases. Brown versus Board of Education was just before my father had graduated. And so this is the team. This is the team that went to court and filed the documents, etc. It is just overwhelming when I think about what he was doing and how I missed it all these years. But I'm very, very thankful that I've been able to leave this legacy for my children, even my family, my nieces, because they never have to wonder again.
You know,
where
yeah.
they come from.
I'm sorry, yeah. That the whole family knows now, you know, the connection. And it is something that everyone can be so proud of and point to, you know. And back then, I think they were very sacrificial. The cause was so big and so great that no one had time to rest on their fame or how great they were. It took all of them together corporately to move that movement, to accomplish what they accomplished.
Yes, for the ladies that made the sandwiches and the picket signs and the students who marched and did sit-ins. I mean, it was a vortex of energy all around the Black community at those, as you said, at that time. The time had come and there were those who were prepared to usher us through it.
I think that people are kind of saying there's a dearth in the land for leadership in that realm. And I think the question is coming from who in the church, because many of the church leadership were the ones who kind of spearheaded, were at the head or the forefront of the movement, you know, civil rights movement. And I think people are looking for that kind of the next Martin Luther King or someone like that to gather people or rally everyone together, especially as we see things going today, you know. They're trying to make people regress, but, you know, we've come too far. we can't step back.
But what we do lack is a strategy, and the Black church absolutely was one of the major meeting hubs and motivators for the people to gather, because on the local level, the pastors had to encourage their people that not only was this okay, that they were joining as well. And so there's a picture in either the book or my archives where there were over 600 people in a church meeting when the sit-in students, the tall timers 34, had been arrested, and they came together at a church to plan and strategize. What are we going to do? How are we going to get our kids out of there? What's next? Or, you know, and so the church doors were open, and church has changed. I'll just leave it at that. That church has changed, and although some of our pastors are much more educated now, some of them are fighting a different front in terms of, the souls of men. Um,
Mm,
I don't think we've had a leader since that I can think of right now that unified not only the people, but the thoughts and minds of people. And
mm,
of course, Jesse Jackson tried, and, you go on and on after King's assassination. There just hasn't been another one. And King was not a machine all by himself. There were
no.
others behind him, but his articulation and his presence and his speeches, he was mesmerizing.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's the way God's going to bring us out this time. It could be that it's going to be a different kind of advance.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I know that we are being challenged as African American people and brown people all across this country, um, to maintain our civil rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's coming at us in a way that is totally unexpected for me. I did not know until we had our current president how deeply the country was divided. It's been shocking, and it's been very disappointing as well. But just that he raised up a Moses, he's going to raise up somebody again,
Yeah.
and we have to be ready to play our part.
Yes, and the Lord knows all things. He knows exactly what's going on. He knows what's ahead. And there is somebody. He will raise up somebody because he's such a just and a merciful God. And he's brought us this far. It was his hand that guided us and got us to where we are. So, um, but we have to be aware and conscious, and introducing this new civil rights champion that we didn't know of is such a wonderful kind of another patch in the quilt, to inspire, and motivate us to know, and to know you as such a part of that. What incidents would you say that you read, or what part of the story really kind of I don't know, moved you the most when you think about your dad's journey and you reflect on that? Is there anything, one particular thing that stands out in your mind about him, something he did? Or...
Well, that's how I got the title of this book. He was very outspoken. And at a time when we had not achieved the current civil rights that we have now, um, he could have been lynched or killed at any point. He challenged the status quo with his words. He was very eloquent. His command of language and the things that he was doing, he was working on 4 different fronts at the same time. So he was working on a law firm on these national cases. He was a local lawyer. He ran for city council, and he was on several important committees, like the Richmond Crusade for Voters. And so he was challenging things in these committees about student um, delinquency and, trying to make compulsory laws. He was cutting edge. And a lot of people did not like that about him because he was outspoken. And Governor Douglas Wilder had written a book that I actually was able to access and find a little snippet of a story that some of the Blacks were right behind my dad, and some of them were a little more reticent because he was radical and he was outspoken. And some of them were very, very afraid. So I think to be who he was in that time and to fully be present in a way that he had in his heart amazes me, because there were lawyers who were being lynched and killed, and death threats on their family. Even Oliver Hill can talk about, or did in his books talk about, not being allowed to let his kids answer the phone, or, because of the death threats and all those kinds of things. It was real. It was very, very real. And I'm sure my father would have been up there with the tall list of giants had he lived longer. I think one of the tragedies is that he had a condition, a chronic disease that I don't think he knew about until it killed him. And that was hypertension. And in those days, you couldn't do dialysis. You couldn't, I don't know what kind of medications that they had, but it took him out. So, but what a trail he blazed between the beginning and the end. He was the attorney for Wyatt T. Walker, Reverend Wyatt T. Walker, and the desegregation of the library down there in Virginia, St. Petersburg. He was the attorney for the sit-in students. He was the Freedom Riders, first on the scene, sent from the firm when they were locking up people who were trespassing. They called it trespassing. The Boynton case, Boynton versus Virginia. My father was the one that was sent because Oliver Hill was away in DC doing some other things, and he was the first on the scene. So when I started to do the roll call, even Senator Marsh has interviewed with Julian Bond that it was Newsome that was on the scene. And so it's like, I'm just overwhelmed at times with like, what? All these other names that I've grown up with, that I've heard, that I have grown to respect, and there's no Newsome out there. I just felt like, and that was not my beginning motivation. My beginning motivation was I had a hole in my heart that I needed fixed. I needed to know who this man was, and boy, did I discover a magnitude of things that he was about. He wasn't just my father, he was a champion.
I tell you, you know, how God can use one motive to unlock another, you know, piece of history for us to know this, you know, and that is amazing. Like you said, that wasn't, who knew? I mean, you didn't even have any idea how involved he was.
I had no idea. And sometimes now people will say to me or my sister, you're Clarence Newsome's daughter? And it's like, yes. And they're standing in awe like, well, either where have you been all this time, or did you really know who your dad was and what he was doing? You know, he's a Omega Psi Phi, and he's been honored by them several times. He was moving and shaking. And I feel silly sometimes not having known all these years what he was doing and where he was, and what a great man and accomplishments that he obviously achieved. It was just mind-blowing, and it's still mind-blowing. I pick up the book myself almost every other day and I reread the story because I can't believe it.
And you know what, to know what was in his heart and mind, why he was working and pressing so hard, unfortunately, even being away from his family, was to try to make a better life for his family, you know, hoping, looking ahead. You were a little girl, but I'm sure many of them, as even in some of the things you look like Martin Luther King, they looked at their children and said, if we don't, who will? If we don't do it now, then when? Because you want your children to always have a better life.
Right.
And it costs something.
Well,
you know?
I mentioned a book that I also read as a reference point. I can't remember the title, but actually I can. The title is Children of the Movement. I can't remember the author, but he actually interviews many of those famous people's children about what their life was like without their fathers, who had joined the movement, as you said, to make things better, but at the same time missing their family. So it's a rich history. It's rich.
Oh, I tell you, that is amazing. Thank goodness you had that picture. Is worth a million words, where he's holding you up. You know what I mean? It just is like, this is, and what he must have thought looking at you. You know what I mean? My daughter, my baby, this is all gonna be, you know, for you, what that meant to him.
Can I tell you a secret?
Mm-hmm.
I did not find that particular picture until after my mom had transitioned. She had a secret stash of stuff that I guess she just saved for me, but did not want me to access because, as I said, we were a very happy family. I had the best dad in the entire world. He was that kind of fix your skates and teach you how to ride a bike and kiss your boo-boos. He was my dad.
Oh.
And so I guess in her mind, she was keeping the harmony, you know, but some of the treasures that I found in emptying out her house, that picture was among them that I had never seen. And I remember when I first looked at it, I was just frozen. And I was like, he did know me. And obviously I knew him, but I have no real memories of him. So you're right. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And that picture brings me comfort and joy.
It's amazing. But I remember hearing, this was going back some time ago, with the John Kennedy's children, John and Caroline, that, we always see the picture of John when he was a little boy saluting his dad, as the carriage drawn casket was passing by. And you think about the children, that at least they had so many coming up. I mean, not that it hurt any less, of seeing their dad movies and pictures, of him in relation, to them, what having that must have meant to them, because by the time they got older, he was gone. They were, too young maybe to even remember some of those things. But it does bring to mind, like you say, how important it is even to have this information. Thank goodness that your mom even kept that someplace that you could find it after her, and I could understand even her position of wanting to keep the harmony, especially having, like you said, such a wonderful father, and for her a great husband, that might have even broken his heart. It's a tough position for someone to be in, but thank God he resolves some things, and even the pain that maybe as you come up with as a child, that he has a time to get that healing, at least, some kind of relief by getting this information, putting it in your hands, and letting you discover what great roots you have.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive, I have to say. Sometimes I ask myself, boy, did I live up to this? Because my mom was a powerhouse too. She was a Howard University graduate, and she was breaking the color line on her own up here in Jersey. And, together they were quite a power couple. So sometimes I look in the mirror and I say, have I measured up?
That explains it. That explains your drive and your accomplishment, and still going on accomplishing so many other things. So you got good genes, which is so much.
I couldn't lose.
You couldn't.
Both of them.
And with the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But then he chose your parents. He chose all of that, even, so it's amazing how he causes all things to work together.
Oh, yeah.
And then result, good. He didn't say it would be good, but he said, I'll cause it to work together. So
right. I'll make it work.
That is amazing.
I'll make it work. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm sure, you know what? And in these times that we're living in now, with a lot of trauma going forward with this pandemic and things that are going on, how women are now taking on new stresses and, new, more trauma that's been added on top of their lives. And, women of color deal with even so much more, because of all the different things that come against them in a natural sense. And so even what you have done in your life, have been involved in healing processes and helping people, being delivered and, working in the kingdom of God as a woman of God. You've added so much. And it's only just that God would give you this, you know what I mean? To give you all this as a kind of a down payment on what he's going to give you up ahead, It's
very merciful. And I do think that the timing and the seasons we know are ordered and changed by God. And so to be in this season of my life and to have this brand new renewal to make me want to continue to contribute and do something, it has multi-layer payoffs for me. I'm just thankful that I've been involved in therapy and healing and administration and leadership. I mean, I tried to make change for children in the school system, and I tried my best to help people make the changes individually in my counseling office so that they could be whole and have a better life. So I thank God I simply thank God.
And you know, the thing about you is that you don't just have the professional background, but you have the experiential background that gives you so much empathy and compassion, you know, to understand the need to help people. You know, it's and especially women of color.
Yes, and I'm still very concerned about women of color because we are the brunt of many, many health disparities, and those that did not make it through school, who had to drop out or go the long route, and things of that nature. We're survivors and we're thrivers, and the Black woman is amazing. I mean, the resolve that he's given us through the generations, Black women are incredible. And so I think that we have a lot to learn in terms of how to encourage our sisters who sometimes are captured by their circumstances and just need a hand up, just need someone to point the right direction. But the level of trauma, the level of rejection, the health issues, the lack of available Black men for our younger women to marry, and you know 2 and 3 kids, it's overwhelming. And when I think about the parents who are home with their children now during this pandemic, I think what they're being asked to do is difficult, Black and white. They are completely overwhelmed. I'm trying to work from home. We can't go outside. We can't do this. I'm now the primary teacher. And I am praying. I am praying for women, all of the women,
Mm-hmm.
but women of color, we are survivors. We know how to put things together and make them work. We have that mother wit, but we're also human, and things bring us down to a level of survival. And so that is one of my prayers, that during this pandemic, we all pray for mothers and Black women. And this weekend coming up being Mother's Day, grandmothers being mothers, and a long, long, long list of deficits, but we continue to overcome. And so it's on my prayer list to really help empower women.
You know, I think these times are going to force us to go back to like when we were children, where we were our neighbor's keeper. You know, our neighbor would, you know, babysit. Our neighbor would watch out for him, could walk in and out of our house. You know, we worked so together. And I think it's going to force us to come back because, you know, childcare, when you don't have finance, we have to learn to form our little teams, whether you live in the projects, in the hood, wherever you are, in a community, you know, we're going to have to work together and help each other out, form strategies, you know, to help us all, you know, become as much as possible upwardly mobile, moving forward, you know, even through this, you know, because I believe this will pass, but it, you know, it's going to work together somehow. God knew all this was going to happen before. He has a plan in all this. I know he does, because he doesn't do anything without a plan and a strategy.
He's not a haphazard God. He absolutely knows ahead of time where we're going. But I want to go back to your point just a minute about our communities. So many things have plagued our communities that we now have to go back and rebuild. I think the Black church is a huge part of that. I also think that for the younger people who've never had to live through anything like this, they were too young for the Great Depression, too young to have experienced the Spanish flu. None of us were here during that time. This is an awakening that I hope they are going to be shifted by in a positive direction. I remember when the rumor was going around that Black people couldn't get COVID. Well, now we're finding out the exact opposite.
Opposite. Mm-hmm.
And so our communities have to be strengthened. We know that there's a lot of poverty, but maybe people will learn again how to share. If I have some beans, you have some beans.
Absolutely.
If I have a big pot of rice, you have a big pot of rice. That's what makes, African Americans come from a very rich tradition in Africa of community. Everybody shared, everybody had something. So we do have some things to relearn.
And you know what? We have the message. because all of that energy, all of that desire, that foresight to move forward, to not give up, comes from the message that we have, that God, we turn to him. Because if you just hope in self, if you just hope in your government, if you just hope in your community alone, you're going to be left empty. But when you recognize that there is a God that sits on the circle of the earth, he is still sovereign, he is still in charge, and he's looking for us to look to him to get the answer. So, and he has the answer. He declared the end from the beginning, so he already knows what's going on. So I really feel like, it's the worst of times, but it's the best of times for the Lord. You know what I mean? Because that message is a unifying message. That's why I say if people are really in Christ, they will be united, because we won't see each other as brown, black, white, or anything else.
Right.
God have taken of one blood for all of us, created all of us, and we are his people, and there is neither red nor black. That's why, that's the whole new thing, that concept that he presented was, being Christians, that's encircles and encompasses everybody. There's neither Jew nor Gentile nor Greek, but we are all one. His prayer was, Father, make them one, even as we are one. And if you are preaching that message, then you have to look at everybody as your true brother and true sister, not that you are better than any of us. And I don't mean just for the Caucasian or any other community, but even within our own community, that somebody is lesser than you or you are better than somebody else. But God has created us all, and we are to be helpers one to another.
Well, that was the revolution Jesus started, about the kingdom, what it meant to be a part of the kingdom on earth and our future in the kingdom in heaven. It's like he came to empower those that were poor and lost and broken and disenfranchised. And boy, was that turning society upside down. And it's almost the same thing now. It's hard to see, unless you're a part of the ultra rich, everybody's in the same boat. Okay, and that causes people to clump together to try to become better human beings. And, when the news is playing, sometimes the stories that they show reassures my confidence that, okay, there's still some good people out there, regardless of their ethnicity and, their race. There are caring, loving people out there, and they're still doing wonderful things in the name of the Lord. And I'm happy that we're beginning to discover that there are people, as hard as others hate, Christians love.
Mm-hmm. That's true. True Christians do love. And like I said, the Lord has this thing so worked out that I am excited. I know we all have, maybe be a little intimidated by our circumstances, but he advises the rich to not lay hold on their riches, to not think that their riches can save them in scripture, because it'll touch Pharaoh's house, it will touch the king's house. Listen, Prince Charles had COVID.
He did?
The son, the queen's son, he was sick.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and I don't know the form or strength of it, but he was sick. If I'm correct, I believe that he did. And but thanks be unto God, look what he did. No one is untouchable. And until we realize that, it wouldn't be. God is so fair. It doesn't just touch the poor or the middle class. It'll reach high up. He can pull them all down. So we all do have to realize that we are in this together. That's why it's encouraging when I hear some things on the news about some of the rich, like, probably are waking up to this. Like, if we don't do something, it's going to eventually, like Bill Gates and Bloomberg and people like that are contributing millions. Or, I hear about some of the young celebrities, even from, the African-American community, some of the hip hop artists and different things, are realizing that, we have this wealth, but we need to use it, unify it for something, a greater cause than just, establishing wealth, which is good. And maybe it takes something like this to awaken us to the fact that we've got to get back and get together. So I thank God for that. But just learning about Brother Newsome is such a great inspiration, today. And I am so happy that the Lord led you to do this book, Outspoken. And that can be purchased on Amazon,
Yes,
right?
it can be purchased on Amazon, delivered to your home, hard copy in a paperback, or you can do the ebook, which is less expensive, but some people don't like to read their books on technology. But it certainly is available, and you can go to Amazon and just type in my name and it comes up, or you can remember the title, the very long title, and Outspoken, Clarence W. Newsome, a civil rights champion, a daughter's reflection.
That is awesome. Well, I am so happy that you were able to be with the well again. And it's not again the last time. You're my go-to. So I thank you for giving us the time, to share this wonderful, wonderful new authorship of this book that you did on your dad. And I'm sure it's going to bless many people and many hearts and inspire this younger generation, and add to everybody's historical record that they've kept, that we thought we knew who, and now we have another name to add to our records, and that's because the Lord put it in your heart and inspired you. Isn't it something to find more out about your dad? And boy, did you find it out. It's just like God. That's all I can say. It's just like the Lord,
Pleasure.
So,
Pleasure.
yeah. So I don't know. I want to give you the opportunity to say any closing comments or remarks to the viewers of the Well After Hours before we conclude this interview, which I have enjoyed thoroughly. It's been so eye-opening and just inspiring. I'm just inspired hearing your story.
Thanks. Well, one of the thoughts I just want to leave is that we have to resuscitate the village. I would never have been able to find these documents in archives, and if we're not for the Afro-American newspaper. We need our own digital media. We need to be able to continue our story in a way that is untainted. We need to resuscitate the village and understand that our power and strength is among ourselves, that we have been incredible warriors both in Africa and here in the United States. We have to have more confidence and lift our self-esteem about what it means to be an African American person. And in particular, our men have been on the front lines, doing the wonderful things at the best of their ability with what they've been given. So I really, really hope that this book rallies everybody's and energizes everyone's attention, that we can't depend on other people to save us and take care of us. We have to sharpen our tools and take care of each other. So I certainly hope that it does energize people, and everybody has a story. And just because it doesn't make the newspaper, it doesn't become less valuable. Whatever your grandma did with her peach cobbler, or starting her own neighborhood bakery, or all the things that she did, the recipes, it all comes together as your legacy. And so we need to own our legacy, be proud of it, and make sure that our children coming behind us know those stories.
That is awesome. On that note, I'm going to say thank you again. Thank you to the viewers of the Well After Hours. Thank you for being with us. Don't forget, every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. on Facebook page, Beverly D. Allen, and on YouTube channel, Beverly D. Allen Ministries, LLC. And we'll be looking for you again on next Thursday at the Well After Hours. God bless you. And thank you again.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory.
Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, the spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots, we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes,